hard and she never know I love her to escape. Bones are thrown, sticks and stones, just to let you validate your message to
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Loading Mag NUFC. We are back for another away day show as we preview the Brighton versus Newcastle United game that will be on tomorrow, 3 o'clock kickoff. The battle of the winners over the first course of the round of fixtures. Both got 3 points. I'm sure we'll talk about both games in a little bit more detail. But the reason why I came on laughing at the beginning is because somebody made a surprise appearance as it was rolling through on the intro. Welcome, as always, the main man, Chris Hall. How you doing?
I'm all right, mate. Yeah, just very hot. Very, very busy day today in work. But other than that, mate, I am all good and very much looking forward to this evening's show.
Definitely. And look, as I said last night on the Fully Transfer Show, I've got my trusty fan next to me. I apologise if you can hear it in the background, but it is needed. The heat wave is running wild in the UK at the moment. So, yeah, 100% need the fan to keep us cooling down. But look, we are rolling on to game 2 after a fantastic win against Nottingham Forest. The boys did us proud, and we were obviously there to experience it, myself and Chris. And look, great result from Newcastle United perspective. But what are you, just in your early thoughts before we get our fantastic guests on? What are you expecting coming forward into the game on Saturday?
I'm expecting a battling performance. I mean, as you know, Pete, over the years, we haven't always fared very well against Brighton. Obviously, last season we got a win, which was great. But I don't know. Like I've always been quite reserved about this game, and I know we spoke about it, didn't we? And said, for me, I would right now I would take a draw. Some people would say, no, we need the win. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we're not capable of the win. I'm not saying we're not going to get the win. And I'm really interested to hear what Chloe and Josh have got to say about Brighton. Obviously, they made a fantastic start to the season at the weekend, so they're going to be coming in very confident as well. But honestly, I would take a point because I think, and I used to say, rattle on and say this all the time last season, Pete. Any point away from home is not a bad point. It's really not. And I think if you win the majority of your home games and you pick up points when you're going away as well, you're not going to go far wrong. So yeah, for me, I would take a point, but I'm hopeful. I hope we win, and I think we're more than capable of doing that. But I just feel like we're coming up against the Brighton side, probably the worst side to play them. Bearing in mind they'd never beaten Man United before, and then they go and do that. So they're going to be in high spirits as well. So it promises to be a good game anyway.
Definitely. And look, we're going to get the opinions and the thoughts of our two Brighton fans that are going to come and join us right now. But just as if you can see in the chat, those of you that are in the chat, yes, there has been a Nick Pope loving this afternoon. It's gone absolutely mad. I was just talking to Chloe and Josh off air. If anyone follows Newcastle on Twitter, Toon polls tweeted something out earlier, and all the major big companies in the UK have just gone Nick Pope crazy. Everyone's typing Nick Pope, from McDonald's to Burger King to, I said to the guys in the back, Polo Mints, Milky Bar, Dunelm, even Charlton have put a picture on of Nick Pope when he played for Charlton, and Radio 5 Live. It's gone absolutely mad, and like everyone's typing Nick Pope in. It's gone Nick Pope quite crazy on Twitter. It's actually the top trending name, Nick Pope on social media.
But why? Like, what's the reason for it? I mean, I haven't seen the Toon Polls tweet, but
I've not seen the original tweet, but I know that he tweeted it out. But it's just gone absolutely mad. Check it out afterwards. It's just gone crazy. But look, we'll get the guys in because I want to get their opinions on the Brighton game, because I think this is going to be a really tasty fixture. And look, I'm delighted to welcome back both Chloe, British Tea Hater. Welcome back, Chloe. And
Hi.
also Josh from Together BHA. How are you guys doing? All good. Great to have you back on. And you know what? I was just thinking about this today. I was thinking, hold on a second. I think you're the first two guests that we've had from a club that have actually been on 3 times on away days. So you guys deserve the hat-trick ball. I'm going to try and sort something out for you. I'll speak to you after the show. You deserve something to replicate the hat-trick ball 3 times on away days. It definitely deserves something. So bear with me on that. But it's great to have you back on, both of you. Your views are massively appreciated on all things Brighton Hove Albion. Look, we're going to get into it right now. Look, Brighton have had a great start to the season. Obviously, they got their first win at Old Trafford. Chloe, we were talking off air. You were there to enjoy that. Just from your perspectives, first and foremost, were you, be honest, were you expecting a win? And, how does that kind of set you up as a club, in your opinions, for the season ahead? So, look, Chloe, I'll start with you. You were there.
Yeah, I wasn't really expecting a win. I thought we might get a point. I think we did quite well in pre-season, and we've got a good squad of players. But it's Old Trafford. I didn't expect us to win there. And I think it's just a great start. Really, you couldn't have asked for better. Beating United at their place. Really, just it's a great start. Hopefully, we can keep getting a few results and build up a bit of momentum. And
definitely. Josh, I'll come to you. Watching it in the States, watching that unfold, what were your overriding feelings in that, from your perspective? Has your expectations of this season changed off the back of that result? Is it kind of made you think slightly differently, or are you still sort of tunnel visioned on the way in which you expected Brighton to go this season?
Yeah, it's always a little bit different because I watch every game on the TV now, which is very different to how it is in the stadiums. Like, I've been in the stadiums for ages, so not being there anymore it gives you a totally different perspective sometimes. And for me, though, I don't think the result has changed anything really. It's just one game, right, out of 38. We have a long way to go, so I'm not really too worried about the long-term vision. That's well in Potter's and Williams' hands. Not too worried about that. The United game didn't really change too much. But obviously the win was superb, right? We'd never won at Old Trafford before. We'd obviously made them very sad last year at the Amex with the absolute drubbing that we put upon them. But the Old Trafford tax is real, and we generally struggle there with a couple of dodgy decisions. We weren't short of those this week as well, but we overcame them and still got a result. So, that sort of performance off the back of losing our 2 best players, I mean, there's not much of a better start that you can ask for in the Premier League, is there?
No, definitely not. And, like you've just alluded to, you beat them 4-0 at your place at the back end of last season. You are in a position where you seem to be the team that knows how to beat Man United at the moment, which is, it's not a mean feat. People talk about their decline, but it's still a tough place to go. And the fact that you beat them in the way that you did particularly for the first 60 odd minutes. It was very, very convincing. It's an impressive thing. And from our perspective, mine and Chris's, we've only beat in the last 40 odd years, we've only beaten Man United at Old Trafford once. That was the Johan Kabay many years, 8-9 years ago. So for the fact that you've gone and done that this season, that's a fantastic achievement from that point of view. But look, Chris, just before we move on, what's your opinion on watching that game at Old Trafford and watching Brighton win the way they did at Old Trafford? Has it made you think slightly differently for the game on Saturday?
I think, like Josh said, probably not. I mean, I've always had a high opinion anyway of Graham Potter and Brighton. Like, I think Brighton have got some fantastic players, and I suppose my opinion over the last 12, 18, 24 months of Man United has really gone down and down and down. So I don't know why I was so surprised when Brighton, went and did that to them at the weekend, because it shouldn't really have been that much of a shock, because one thing Brighton are is, they're well drilled, very organised, good on the ball, comfortable on the ball, and they can play some good football. And when you come up against a Man United side who are kind of none of those things at the minute, like, I don't know why I was so surprised that they managed to do it. They've got fantastic individual talents, but they've got a brand new manager in. There's still rifts within the camp. They can say there isn't, but there absolutely is. I suppose the big appeal for me this weekend, and this is why maybe I'm bottling a bit and saying, I'd take a draw, is because I kind of feel that us and Brighton are probably quite similar now. I mean, we saw under Steve Bruce, Pete, how Graham Potter used to just have a field day. Brighton used to tear us apart. I think one season it was back to back. It was 3-0 home and away, wasn't it? And we just got torn apart. And it was one of those games where, as a fan, we used to do the match reactions and we'd just be like, we got battered. There was no arguing it. There was no, oh, that was unlucky and we should have had this, we should have had that. Brighton just played us off the park. So I think I think this weekend's game promises to be really interesting, and I think that it'll be interesting to test ourselves and see how far we've come. Under Eddie Howe, and we've brought in that little bit of extra quality, and let's see if it makes a difference. Me and you were talking, weren't we, Pete, on the way out from St James's last weekend about the central defensive partnership. Is this the game for Sven Botman, or will he stick with Dan Burn? And it's things like that we're all looking forward to finding out tomorrow afternoon at 3:00. But I'm really looking forward to the game, and I think it will be a good test to see where we are and how far we've come.
I think Chris has touched on an interesting point, and I want to get your opinions on this, Chloe and Josh. He talked about the two managers, Eddie Howe and Graham Potter, and the two clubs, in fact, being in a similar position. From your perspectives, is this kind of a battle of two well-matched teams at this moment in time, in your perspectives? Chloe, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say it's going to be quite a close match. I think I would say it's very evenly matched. You guys really improved under Eddie Howe last season. Obviously beat us, and yeah, I do think it will be a very, very hard match for Brighton. Which it does worry me a little bit. I'm not going to lie. So.
No, it's an interesting point. And look, Josh, I'll come to you because there have been some Brighton fans that have said that this game tomorrow at 3:00, for them, in their opinions, is going to be tougher in some cases than the game at Old Trafford. Are you of the same mindset in terms of the way in which this game has kind of like sort of come together?
On paper, no. Psychologically, yes, I think is the answer to that. Our home form last year was not great, right? We were much better away from home since the pandemic started, really. Since COVID kicked in, we've just had a nightmare at home. We've not been so good. So first home game of the season, Newcastle coming to visit. And I'm sure that there may be a question later on. I think I saw in the chat of who I'm most worried about on Newcastle. The answer is Eddie Howe. He generally has our number. As a manager, his record against Brighton is outrageous, probably one of the best. So he's obviously a talented manager, and he seems to have our number. But we also seem to have Newcastle as a team's number. So it's a weird little matchup that we've got going on. It really depends on, the pressure's going to be on to make the Amex a fortress again. So in that respect, I think it is going to be a tougher match with the expectations of the fans coming into this one. When you go away to Old Trafford, like you said, you've won once in 40 odd years. You consider that a free hit, right? You go to Old Trafford, you get what you get, and you come home. At home at the Amex, first game of the season against a team that are in a similar position to us this year. Obviously, 2 years from now, I suspect we'll be in two very different orbits. But for now, we're two teams in the same kind of trajectory. So it is going to be a more pressure-filled game in terms of hopes and expectations from the fans, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's one of those that it's going to be a tight game. I think I've just seen from one of the comments, Paul Oxley, friend of the channel, is he thinks it's going to be a tough game. He thinks it's going to be 1-1. Paul Gallant is a little bit more confident. He's got my prediction 3-0 to Newcastle. And of course, Paul, if you've seen him on any of our chats, is always super, super confident. Yeah, but it is what it is. But I think, most fans in general think that this is going to be quite a tight game for Newcastle United and Brighton. That is for sure. Now, look, what I wanted to talk about next is transfer business over the summer, because Newcastle have gone out there and we've gone out there and signed a number of players so far. Hopefully, we're going to get a few more in the next week or two. But we've got. How can I not start with the main man, Pope? Trending on Twitter at the moment. We went out and plucked him from Burnley, who we ended up relegating at the back end of the season. We've then gone and made Matt Targett's move permanent from Aston Villa after his loan spell. And obviously we brought Robocop, as we like to call him, aka Sven Botman, who hasn't started yet for us. Surprisingly for me, thought he'd be in there, but Big Dan Burn beat him to the starting lineup, which we'll also get into later on in the show. So we've made a few signings there from our perspective, but Brighton have signed a few players themselves in terms of, and I'll put them on the screen, Julio and Cisco, if I'm pronouncing that right, for an undisclosed fee. We've got Simon Adingra for 7.2 million, and then you've got Levi Cowell. I think wasn't quite part of the Marc Cucurella deal from Chelsea, but he ultimately, when Cucurella went for the fee, I think it was around the 60 odd million to Chelsea. In return, Levi Cowell came on loan. He is a left-sided centre-back, if I'm right in thinking, for yourselves at Brighton. So, from your perspective on the money, and look, we don't know how much you've spent, but it's certainly not the 85 million that you've managed to recoup this summer. You've certainly not spent that amount. Are you, in general, happy with your business that you've done going into the new season? Chloe, again, I'll start with you. You pulled a little face there to make me think that you weren't quite happy with your business. So I'm not sure whether you're going to say anything different.
I do feel like we've sold two of our best players, and I'm not sure if we need a Basuma replacement so much. Our midfield seems to work all right without him, but I would really like to see us sign a left wing back before the window closes, because I think we will miss Cucurella. And you look at who we've signed, and Caicedo, he wasn't even in the squad against United. Adingra is gone out on loan, so it's like we haven't really brought in anyone. We got a few players that we had out on loan who have returned to us, and we've got obviously Undav, Matoma, Van Heck. We've got a few new players in our squad that have just obviously been out on loan, and they are a new addition to our squad. But yeah, I do feel we're a bit light, especially after selling Cucurella, and I just hope we get someone in, because I heard we were looking for a left wing back even if we didn't get rid of them. So
Right.
I
Okay.
feel like we need someone in that role.
Josh, Chloe said she feels there needs to be a left wing back coming in for Brighton. Are you in agreement with that? Is there anywhere else you feel like there needs to be any additions, or do you think Brighton are okay the way they are? What are your thoughts on your business in the summer?
Yeah, no, I think Chloe's spot on. The way Brighton work is we tend to work 2 seasons ahead almost. So for Bissouma, we signed Caicedo 2-3 years ago with the option of hoping that he would become the next big thing, right? And that's exactly what he seems to be doing. Arguably making a bigger, quicker impact than Bissouma ever did early on, right? He's been absolutely mental these first 10 or so games. But that was 2 years ago we brought him in, right? We needed players to compete with Trossard, and we needed players to provide that offensive attacking options. So we brought in Mitoma a year and a half ago with the option of hoping to see that in a year and a half's time. And that's what we're starting to see now. We're starting to see those players signed up. We brought in Colwill on a loan, and I think the problem is we've had to act more reactionary than proactive. We had no intention of selling Cucurella this summer at all. We hadn't planned for it. We hadn't expected it. We did not plan for such a stupid amount of money to come our way. So we're having to struggle a little bit to find someone to replace him. We haven't got that kind of 1 to 2 year chess move ahead because it wasn't an expected move. So I think we will scramble a little bit for this one, but there is an absolute metric crap ton of names out there that are being thrown around in association with the left back role. But as of right now, we don't have a left back outright. That's just a fact. We don't have a left back in the squad. We have people who can play left wing back, but we don't have an out-and-out left back in the squad like Cucurella used to play. Solimarch has played at left back once in his whole career. Trossard has never played left back. Mitoma has never played left back, not at USG or at Brighton. Colwill, I don't know if he ever played left back when he was out on loan last year. I know Van Heck definitely didn't. Webster, Veltman, Dunk never played left back. So we're without one. I think we definitely need to sign a left-sided defender, whether it's a left back, left wing back, whatever they're most comfortable doing. But we just need someone a little bit more defensively minded than Trossard at left wing back. He's great when he plays there. I mean, he cut Manchester United apart, but when he's on the defensive side, he needs a little bit more help. Cucurella was able to almost do 3 men's jobs. We don't have anyone else to do that right now. I hope we go get someone. And then Maupay, right? Neil Maupay is rumored to be on his way out. I know Chloe will be real sad about that one, but the rumors persist in Italy that Salernitana, honestly, it's bad football knowledge, but I'd never heard of that football team before they even came in for him. But apparently they're a Serie A side, and they're after him for 15 odd million and are not giving up. So if he goes, I think we'll certainly want to bring someone in up top as well. So that's one of those wait and sees. But yeah, all that to say, left back, yes, please. We do need one.
He was a player I was going to bring up for that reason, is because I know, Chloe, you're a big fan of Neil Maupay. I actually saw that there was a link a couple of days ago with him going to Everton. Apparently, Everton were looking at him as a potential deal. I saw that on the link, like I said, a couple of days ago. Maybe nothing in it. I know they're looking for a striker as well, and maybe that's where the links come from. But yeah, I certainly didn't see the one in Serie A. I, for the last couple of years, have always assumed that he was the first choice striker for Brighton. He was always in and around being the top scorer. What's changed? Because he was on the bench. I don't even think he got on at Old Trafford. Correct me if I'm wrong. He may well have. But what seems to have changed that he's come from? You signed him, I think, from, is it Brentford? You signed him from Brentford. You brought him in. He was the main striker, scoring goals, and then all of a sudden, he's out the team and looking like, as Josh said, he could be leaving the club. Look, Chloe, I'll come to you because I know you're emotionally invested in this with me and Maupay. What's changed?
I'm not too sure. We started playing Welbeck up top, and he's been, undroppable recently. He's been absolutely brilliant. So I suppose that may be a contributing factor when we're only playing with one striker. And Welbeck just is undroppable, so you can't play Maupay, unfortunately. And I did read that Undav is above the pecking order, above Maupay. So yeah, he's sort of gone right down. I'm not too sure why. I know why Welbeck's been brilliant recently, so you can't really complain about that, unfortunately.
I've heard a lot about Welbeck. I have heard a lot about Welbeck. He looked absolutely spot on at Old Trafford. He looked really, really good. Played really, really well. I think even Gary Neville came out and said that he was the best Man United player on the pitch on Sunday, which I think says a lot. Obviously, being an ex-Man United player, he did look good. And what I've heard from a number of Brighton fans and just in general is that, for once, Danny Welbeck has had a full pre-season and he looks fit and firing. I think you've alluded to it, Chloe, and I think Josh, I'm sure, will agree. But Chris, you obviously nodded your head when Welbeck would come up in the discussion. So I assume you watched the game. Is that a worry for us from a Newcastle perspective? Danny Welbeck fit and firing? Are you worried about him potentially causing problems on Saturday?
If he plays like he did against Man United, yeah. I mean, I think we've all known that there is a player in there with Danny Welbeck. He's a good player, and you don't end up playing for the likes of Man United and Arsenal if you're not a half decent player. I think the only thing that's held Danny Welbeck back over the years is injuries. He's really struggled to kind of play a full season or maintain his form. But if he's got a fantastic pre-season in him. On his day, he's a good player. He's a good player. But do you know what, Pete? I wanted to go back to Neal Maupay actually, because if you remember, because I'm sure we mentioned Chloe and Josh because we were talking about it on a different show. I don't think it was a fully loaded transfer show, but we were talking about the rumours that Neal Maupay was offered 15 million. And if you remember, I said, Neal Maupay reminds me very much of like a Craig Bellamy type. He's probably one of those players that doesn't really get the credit he deserves. And he's nasty, isn't he? He's got that streak in him. But when he plays for your team, you absolutely love it, which is probably why Chloe's in love with him. He's the kind of player who you want on your side. And I remember saying, to you lads, I don't think he'd be a bad player to have in and around the squad because he's got that nasty streak. And as I say, when you're a striker, that selfish or nasty streak, you need that. And whenever Neal Maupay's played against Newcastle, I've always thought he's played pretty decent. So I'd be interested to hear Josh and Chloe on whether they think 50 million's enough. Like I know Chloe, I don't think 60 million would be enough for Chloe, but is 15 million enough? Like, would you be happy with that? Or because we were saying, weren't we, Pete? Like 15 million these days doesn't get you a lot. No. And if you're getting a Premier League experienced striker for 15 million, that's not bad going.
I agree. I have to agree with that. I think he's one of those players that you want. He almost reminds me a little bit like of Craig Bellamy with his attitude. He does. He just like you said, that little bit of a nasty streak, and all opposition fans hate that type of player. But when he's playing for your club, you absolutely love it. You do. But yeah, it's a really interesting one. Look, Josh, Neal Maupay. What's your opinion on this situation?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Would I sell him for 15 million? First question, yeah, I would. Couple of things. The nastiness is something that I think everyone loves when you have him on your team. Anthony Knockaert was the boy before him, right? He was a massive dickhead to play with. We loved him. We loved Anthony. And Maupay stepped up and filled that role really well. I'm sure you boys haven't seen him yet, but I feel like you'll get acquainted as the season goes on. But Dennis Undav provides that same mean streak big time. He's He's an arrogant, nasty, physical player that scores a hat load of goals in the Belgian Prem last season. And he's going to provide that same edge. And he seems to have already edged Maupay out. I think the other reason that we're struggling a little bit to get Neil in and around the squad, not only is it because Welbeck has stayed fit for a while, and by the way, looks in the best shape of his life, like in insane shape. We found at the end of last season, where we came into a bit of a purple patch after that horrific losing streak, we switched out Maupay, started playing Welbeck, and something that Albion have struggled with for years now in the Prem under Potter is scoring goals outside of the striker position. Maupay would score 8, 9, 10 goals a season, but we struggled to get anyone else above 3 or 4. Donkey would score a couple from set pieces. Trossard would contribute with 2 or 3. But generally, we struggled to find goals from elsewhere. Welbeck came into the side, and Potter mixed it up a little bit with those midfielders behind him. And all of a sudden, goals started coming from everywhere in that last 6 or 7 games of the season. And we saw it just this weekend with Pascal Gross coming up with 2. Welbeck is not scoring as many goals as Neil is, but the way he runs that line, and you saw Manchester United this weekend, Martinez especially, what a debut for him, just absolutely bottled it. Welbeck bullied him all game. And the way he drags that front line further back for them, and it provides that space for our midfielders, your Trossards, your Grosses, your Caicedos, your McAllisters, your wing backs, even your centre halves are happy to roam forward. It's creating that much more space that provides so many more opportunities for all the players instead of just Neil, for example. And I think Potter's seen that, and the numbers speak for themselves, right? That we're starting to get better results. And I like Neil, I really do. But if at this case, if he's below Undav and Welbeck in the pecking order for 15 million, and like Chloe says, we generally play one striker with a whole bunch behind them, it feels like a no-brainer at that point. If we can get him out and send him off to Serie A, that would be even nicer, to be honest. I don't want him to play against us because he will score. But yeah, I would take the deal, and I hope that gives a little bit more perspective on why I think he's fell down that pecking order as well.
No, it's interesting point of view from the Brighton side of things. With regards to Neil Maupay and the kind of resurgence of Danny Welbeck. It's certainly something that didn't come into my thinking with regards to who would start. I was assuming that Maupay would start the season, but Danny Welbeck looks strong and looks a real player, and he's one that we're definitely going to have to keep an eye on. That is for sure. But look, just to break it up slightly, I think we've got a few questions that we've starred from the chat. So, Chris, I don't know if you want to fire a few questions to Josh and Chloe. Oh, he's on mute.
He is on mute.
Jesus. I've got a habit of doing that recently, guys. Sorry, it's because I've got me vaping. I don't want everyone sounding like I'm blowing up or anything, but so apologies for that. Yeah, there's a cracking question coming from Adam McCarthy. Well, I think it's a cracking question. Some people may not, but question for Chloe and Josh is Wilson or Welbeck, who's better?
Oh, yeah. Go on, Chloe. What do you think?
I mean, I want to say Welbeck. I'm gonna go Welbeck.
Okay.
I'm not going to elaborate on that.
Very
we'll
strict.
Just leave it there.
Welbeck, move on. That's it.
Okay.
Josh, what are your thoughts?
Wilson, annoyingly, numbers don't lie. He scores too many goals as a number 9 to not be ahead of him. Would I rather have Welbeck or Wilson in the squad we're currently running with, and the role that Welbeck's playing? Welbeck, but I think pound for pound, the goals don't lie. He's better at scoring goals, so it's a tough one for Brighton. Welbeck. For Premier League, Wilson.
Out of interest, Chloe, if we'd asked you Wilson or Maupay, what would the answer to that have been?
Maupay.
Yeah.
No, that would be a lie. That would be a lie. I'm sorry. I love Neil, but yeah, Wilson definitely better.
Cool. No, sorry, I thought I should ask that. Now, we've got half a question here, but Pete, if you think I'm wording this wrong or you think I've misinterpreted it, do let me know. But I think I know what Michael Pomar means. But Michael Pomar asks, question for Josh and Chloe, are you afraid of England having a bad World Cup if it? Now, I'm assuming he means if it means that Southgate gets sacked and England come calling for Graham Potter. And
Yes.
I think that's what he's asking.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I did have a look further down the chat and I couldn't find anything, Michael. So apologies if I've got that wrong. But I would assume that's why Brighton would worry about England having a bad World Cup, I would think.
Huge talking point, certainly in the Newcastle, in sort of the Newcastle social media, in the Newcastle world at the moment, with obviously Eddie Howe getting the new deal. There's lots of talk that he got the new deal in order to fend off England. Now, I think, Chris, you've made a great point, and Marco Pomo with another fantastic question. Are you afraid of England having a bad World Cup if it could potentially mean Southgate gets sacked and Potter maybe gets asked to take the reins? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm absolutely terrified, to be honest. I want to see England do well anyway, because I do support them. But God, losing Potter to them would it would suck. And I can't see him turning something like that down. It's not really something you can turn down. So yeah, hopefully England will just have a brilliant World Cup and we won't have to worry about losing Potter, because I do think it would be a big loss.
Yeah, definitely. Josh, are you with the same mindset?
I don't think he'll go. That's genuinely my bold statement. I don't think he'd go to England. I don't think his management style suits it. He is such a personnel manager. He needs his players to be with him and working on his philosophy and his processes. And England don't provide the time for that, right? It's a quick one and done. You come in, you do, you go and you know, international management is the sort of thing that Jose Mourinho would be great at. I'm surprised he hasn't done more of it. But for Potter, he's so methodical and it's so in depth and detailed. I don't think he would take it. But if they came in for him, I'm obviously still going to poop my pants, because England is England at the end of the day. If I'm honest, I'm honestly more worried about Manchester City in the coming years. I really do think they're the ones that may well come in for him. I really do. City feels like a no-brainer 2, 3, 4 years down the line when Pep leaves, unfortunately for us. And as Chloe said, I think Brighton can lose just about anyone as long as it isn't Graham right now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Chris, your thoughts on this? I know it's obviously a question for Chloe and Josh, but obviously some interesting points there is that, you know, obviously Chloe's dreading the thought of England having a bad World Cup, but Josh is quite adamant that he won't take the job, and actually Man City is an alternative. Interesting thoughts.
Yeah, do you know what? I have heard that actually. Whether Josh told me that last time he was on, I don't know, but I have heard that Man City, you know, do quite like Graham Potter, and you know, most progressive clubs do put plans in place, don't they, into the future. We saw that with Alex Ferguson. He earmarked David Moyes like 2-3 seasons before he actually went. So this is what the top clubs do. You know, they'll look and they'll see what the next plan is, and it wouldn't surprise me if Graham Potter was the next one, because, like I say, whenever we've came up against Brighton, particularly when we were under Steve Bruce, they're very well organised, very well drilled, and Graham Potter's not had that much money. I know obviously, you know, he was working under Dan Ashworth, who we managed to pinch. Sorry, I did try my best not to mention Dan Ashworth when we were on, but you know, he's done a very good job, Graham Potter, and I know he took a little bit of stick. I think it was last season. Josh, Chloe, correct me if I'm wrong, where perhaps, you know, the results weren't going their way. But I think Graham Potter is destined for bigger things. I suppose the biggest test or the biggest question, and we've heard so many previous England managers say it, is that when England come calling, you can't say no. And as we've, you know, heard other England managers say as well, you know, sometimes the opportunity only comes once, And if Graham Potter says no, he could never be offered the job again for what it's worth. So it's whether or not he has had a strong whisper in his ear that Man City is definitely an option, or whether he thinks, yeah, but it's managing my country. Like how many people have managed their country? Do you know what I mean? It's a massive opportunity for any manager. That is literally the pinnacle of football, really, isn't it? Football management. So it's whether or not that would happen. I don't know, but I'm a little bit worried about Eddie Howe. I've got to be honest. I know he signed his new contract, but as I say, it's one of the top jobs in football, isn't it? So with a great crop of young players coming through as well, so they've got chances to challenge for things.
Yeah. Just to add real quick, Potter is also contracted to 2025, so they both have quite long-term contracts. Yeah. So it's if they're wanting either of them, they're going to have to pay some money for either. So it's a case of whether they end up deciding to go down the less exciting route and get another Southgate-esque manager in for nothing.
It's a great point. Is that I think that's why both managers are contracted for long periods to fend off sort of England in approaching these managers. You've got to pay big money to get them out of their clubs. There was some talk that from some of the journalists that they didn't believe Eddie Howe would leave because of the project at Newcastle being so unique in what it is. They felt that he wouldn't leave even if he was offered the job. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure. And I mentioned this back end of last season that was the one thing I was worried about, is that if he continues this rise with the question marks around Southgate, that he could potentially be an option. It's easy and fair to say that both managers will be up for discussion. There's no doubt about it. Both managers will be in those question marks, and rightly so, because they're two terrific English managers that could potentially take their clubs into European football and beyond with different ways of working. So really, really interesting to see how that one unfolds. A couple of other questions, I think, in the chat before we move on, Chris. I think there's one from Paul Oxley, one from Foxy, I think, in there. Some interesting ones.
Yeah, there is. And I'm gonna save the best one to last. What I think the best one is anyway. Obviously, it's a little bit controversial, but I kind of want to move on, and I can tie two of these in actually. So Michael Pomard again, but it ties in with a question Foxy's asked. Brighton shouldn't worry too much about losing Basuma based on how Caicedo looked. He's a fantastic talent and could end up better than the bloke he replaced. And Foxy says something similar, really, saying, do you think Moises Caicedo will still be at Brighton for the full season? After he stands out for Ecuador at the World Cup, it will be impossible not to expect bids for him. Levels above Basuma. Now, I know I've seen Chloe pulling her face there. Obviously, you won't want to lose any more of your players. Obviously, you've seen Cucurella go, which was a big loss, and Basuma as well. But do you think clubs are going to be looking at Caicedo? I mean, he had a really good game, didn't he, last week against Man United?
Yeah, I mean, he still hasn't actually played that many Premier League games. He's looked absolutely brilliant in all of them, to be honest. And our turning form was actually when he came in. But, God, now I'm just worrying about losing him. I don't think we'd sell him in January. I think that would be stupid, really, from us. Obviously, if he does have a good season next summer, who knows what's going to happen? Maybe one of the big clubs will be sniffing around and offer us something we can't refuse. But yeah, I think we'll keep him for this season at least.
What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he'll be going in January. I think we'll see some stupid bids for players post World Cup, because we always do in January. It'll be that perfect time, right? Straight after. But I mean, we've shown already we don't need to sell players financially. We don't need to sell these players. We did not want to sell Cucurella. £62 million is ridiculous. And a free loan of Colwill. He hasn't cost us a penny, by the way. 0. No wage percentage, no nothing. So that sort of transfer was just borderline stupid. You couldn't turn that down. I think for Caicedo, if he continues to play how we're seeing him play before the World Cup, and then does what he could possibly do for Ecuador, I think we're probably, and I know it sounds ridiculous, and it's meant to, I think we'd probably ask for 100 million plus, because it's a go away price, right? Like, it's so stupid that we would expect every club to say absolutely not. Would we expect to sell him for 100 million? No, of course not. That's why it's stupid. But it's a go away price. We're not interested. Is my opinion. I think we would quote such an outrageous amount of money for him in January that we wouldn't have to worry about it. I would expect the price to be a lot more sensible come the summer when we have a chance to actually backfill him. So yeah, I don't think he'll go in January. The summer, different story. Like Chloe said, same as Cucurella, right? We'll have a price in mind at that point and allow those discussions to take place, but not in January.
No, very interesting. Very interesting. I've got one last question here, and I just want to make this point right before I ask you the question. Okay, I didn't write this question, so I'm just gonna make that point. Okay, right. So Paul Oxley asks, question to the Brighton fans: do they feel they are just making up the numbers in the Premier League? Selling your best players will eventually catch up with you, sadly. What do you think, Chloe? Is that a bit harsh, or?
I think that's a bit rude. I think selling your best players, it does worry me, but obviously we've got a replacement for Basuma pretty much in our squad. We're not struggling without him. Cucurella, yeah, obviously we've lost him, but like, we sold Ben White for 50 million and we didn't miss him last season.
No, agree.
I think you can afford to sell players and carry on progressing.
I mean, 60 million, that was a lot of money for Cucurella, wasn't it? Am I right in saying it was about 18 million to buy him? Was that right? Was it from Getafe, I want to say? Was it Getafe?
Getafe,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to sell someone with that turnaround of money for 60 million. And I'm not saying, Cucurella is not a good player. I'm sure, I don't watch him week in, week out like you did, but he looked a good player. But 60 million pounds, that's a lot of money. So I can half see why you've sold him.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I think, I can see it from both perspectives. If you continue to sell your best players, at some point there is going to be a drop off. I think ultimately we're seeing that with Southampton now. For years they've sold off their best players, and now they're in a position. Yes, they got good money for them, but now they're in a position where they are starting to fall. The manager's not getting the players in that he wants ultimately, and there's a little bit of unrest in Southampton. I think it's okay at the moment with Brighton because, like you just said, you've got Caicedo that's come in, that's effectively replaced Basuma and could actually be a better performer overall than Basuma. You're going to go out and spend and maybe bring in a left wing back or a left back, but you've just recouped 85 plus million. You're not going to spend that sort of money to buy a left wing back. So actually, you've gained in this situation. And actually, Ben White, I'm shocked he went for 50 million. I never thought he was worth it. I thought from one good season in the Championship with Leeds is what that valuation came from. I actually don't think he played that well for you when he was in the Premier League. I thought Dunk was better, in my opinion. And I just think, you've recouped a lot of good money there, and that's a good thing. But it's how you then spend and recoup that, and can you continue to play the way you are? I do think you will do that under Graham Potter because he's a fantastic manager. But as we've just discussed before, if you were to lose him and get another manager in, that could maybe disrupt the flow, because Graham Potter plays a very particular style of football that he wants to play. A manager can come in and completely rip that up. We've seen that with Bielsa at Leeds. The new manager that's come in plays a different style and is having to rejig and move on a number of players. That's maybe the one thing I would worry about. I don't know if you would agree with that or not.
Yeah, I can answer. Yeah, I can. So I can address the question too. That's a stupid question. No offense, Paul. I can ask you the same question, Paul. I'd love to know your answer to this. Because in the Premier League, right, the idea is to win it, correct? Like, that's the pinnacle of the Premier League, to be a champion. You're not going to win the league this year, so are you also making up the numbers? Like, that's the question, right? Like, obviously, the answer is no. That's why the question's stupid. The second answer to that question is we're also not owned by nation-state billionaires. It's very lovely that Newcastle now are. Manchester City are loving life. FSG are obviously hugely wealthy over in the States with Liverpool. The Glazers, albeit terrible owners, are also minted. Bloomer has a lot of money, but not that much. So we've been very clear from the outset that the Southampton model is much more what we need to target than anyone else. We need to become a sustainable club. And by bringing in players and approaching it in the way that I mentioned earlier, that almost 2 seasons ahead approach, which Southampton haven't had, by the way, and I think they're now trying to implement that. And I suspect Dan Ashworth is a big part of that too, by the way. I suspect that Dan Ashworth himself has said he was not a big part of the transfer side. He was a big part of the infrastructure and foundational side of Brighton. And I think this is part of it, becoming a self-sustaining club over a number of years that is built to sell our best players, make the money off of them, and replenish the club. And that's what we're seeing this time with Enciso, Adingra, and we saw it last time with Mwepu and Kukurea. So, you know, we have a different business model to Newcastle and Manchester City and Manchester United and Liverpool, and that's okay. Everybody is different. You know, if you want to talk about teams that are possibly kind of making up the numbers with I was going to say no offense to them, but with all the offense to them, because I can't stand them. Burnley are a great example of that, right? They spent nothing year in, year out. They did nothing year in, year out. They played poor football, and they got relegated eventually, deservedly, right? That's a team that I would look at and say, are you really making up the numbers here? Are you doing anything to stay in the league? You weren't. You were just kind of getting by. And thankfully, I don't think there's many teams like that in the Premier League these days. You know, even Forest, who have just come up, are spending cash loads of money in order to try and stay here. So yeah, I don't think there's really any teams left that I would consider trying to make up the numbers. And Brighton's business model, albeit different, is one that we're seeing is sustainable because we're doing okay. So,
and there you go, Paul.
Yeah. I think Paul's been told at that point. I think this is a great opportunity to shift slightly, and let's hear some stats for the first time this season. And there's only one way we hear our stats is with the main man coming up.
Evening all.
He's back by popular demand. Keith, the stat man, is in the house to talk all things stats from Brighton and Newcastle. Great to have you back in, Keith. How are you? And what are we looking at stats related ahead of a big game on Saturday?
Well, great to be back on the show. Great to see everyone. I hope everyone is having a good summer. You know, it seems like 5 minutes since the end of last season, but it's one of those years. And with the World Cup coming up, obviously, and yeah, it's a mixed bag really with Brighton. And I've got to say, slightly slanted towards Brighton, especially in recent years. But I will try and keep this positive, lads. Newcastle side. But Newcastle's all-time record in this fixture, played 30, they've won 10, they've drawn 8, and they've lost 12 against Brighton. Newcastle have only beaten Brighton once in the Premier League in 10 games, with 5 draws and 4 defeats. Brighton as well are on quite a little bit of good form towards the end of last season and the start of this season, where they beat West Ham and Man United at home at the end of last season. If they beat Newcastle, it's going to be the first time that they've won 3 in a row at the Amex in the Premier League since October, November 2019. So all Newcastle fans on this show, watching this show, will be hoping and praying and fingers crossed and everything that doesn't happen tomorrow. Newcastle's last win at the Amex. Pete, you'll remember this one. You too, Chris. Way back in the 2016-17 season at the Amex, that wonder goal from Diarme. One of my favourite goals in recent times. And they also did the double, which was rare, beating Brighton twice in this season. Newcastle fans again will be hoping that Newcastle can add to that win earlier at the end of last season, 2-1 at St James's, and do the double. Let's just see, double for a year. Newcastle away from home this year have, they've picked up 5 wins already compared to 4 throughout the whole of last year. And that's the most since 2013, where they won 7. So, yes, hoping they keep going on the way they're going. Eddie Howe's got a good record against Brighton. He's managed 17 games. He's won 10. He's drawn 4 and he's lost 3. So that's like 2 points, really, over a 2-point average. He's got a good record, but so has Graham Potter got a good record against Newcastle. He's lost only once in 6 games, 3 draws and 2 wins, and the 1 defeat. Neil Maupay and Leonardo Trossard, 3 goals and 2 goals each. They've scored the most goals in this fixture in recent years. Chris Wood actually has a good record in this fixture as well against Brighton. He's got a good goal scoring record against Brighton for other teams, 8 goals in 19 games. And Callum Wilson as well has got a good record against Brighton, 4 goals in 99 games. And he's also got 3 assists as well. And that rounds off the stats there.
Excellent. Appreciate that. As always, Keith. Interesting stats there. Slightly favours Brighton in that situation. Yeah, it's look, Chris, we need to win at the Amex, surely. We need to get our first Premier League win there, surely. From your perspective, it's about time.
Yeah, absolutely. And records are there to be broken, aren't they? And I'm going into the fixture this season a lot more confident than what I did last season. So, look at it that way and that positive. I'd still take a draw. I really, really would. I really do think a draw would be a decent result. So maybe I'm trying to protect myself. Maybe because I'm looking at last season and thinking, and Josh, Chloe, you'll probably know this. We didn't win a match for the first 14 games. So we've already got our first win. So we're already made up based on the start we made last season. But yeah, I mean, I think we're more than capable of winning, and I think that we've got a really good opportunity. But all I'm trying to say, to the fan base and people watching at home is just like if we do end up with a draw, be thankful, kind of thing. If we can avoid defeat, I think it'd be a really good point away from home. But yeah, we can absolutely. You're right, Pete. We can win.
Definitely, and like I said, one thing I want to think about. Look, this is where I'm going to switch now. As we come into the next sort of slightly the final part of the show, is that I want to look at the teams. Now, I put the teams together based on what we think. I hope you can see that on the screen. Can you see that?
Yeah, perfect, mate.
Yeah. I've gone based on Brighton's team, the team that won at Old Trafford. I imagine it will be the same. Chloe and Josh may have some slight changes there, but I've put the 2 teams up on the screen, and you can see that actually, in terms of the way in which the formation is set out from Brighton, is very, very similar to how Forest set themselves out. So I'm assuming that Eddie Howe will be aware of that. As I've gone for Mr. Dan Burn in the team, and I think Adam in the chat will be very happy about that. I think he wanted to make me well aware of the fact that I said Botman was going to start last weekend. I saw it early in the chat. I see everything, Adam. Yes, I'm quite happy. And actually, I think Chris was right. Burn was outstanding on Saturday. And look, it's not a case of wanting a player out because they're rubbish. Actually, Burn's a pretty damn good centre-back. It was just the fact that we paid 30-odd million for Botman. I assumed he was going to start. But I do think we'll go with Dan Burn, going back to Brighton. and the connection he has with Shaw, it's a no-brainer that I think Burn will start, and ultimately the rest of the team kind of sits from itself. Chloe, Josh, from your perspectives with regards to Brighton and looking at the players that are put on the screen for you, is there anyone or anything that we have to fear as Newcastle United fans going into the game tomorrow? And what areas of the pitch do you think are going to cause Newcastle United problems? Chloe, I'll start with you.
Not too sure. I think we got in behind United's defence quite a few times. Welbeck obviously made some good runs. But obviously you guys are a bit more solid. I think there'll be a lot of midfield battles. I think Caicedo will be very important for us. Sorry.
I'm just manoeuvring the team in terms of how I think it may well set up as the game's kind of rolling on. So you've talked about this battle here. We ultimately play with that midfield three with Willock, Joe Linton, and Bruno, with Shelby being out long term, sitting in here. I think this is going to be an interesting battle here with what Caicedo and Bruno are going to do. And Joe Linton coming into that as well, along with Willock. I think Willock will try and make those runs further forward to support Wilson. But I think this is going to be an interesting battle here. We won, and I think Chris, Keith, you'll agree, we won our battle in midfield quite convincingly on Saturday. And I think that's why we're in a position where we're going to win the game. I don't think it's going to be that easy or as easy in there. But, Josh, I'll come to you. Chloe's talked about Welbeck in his runs. He was making that left-sided run into this little bit of space at Old Trafford quite a lot and really committing Harry Maguire time and time again. Is there anything else that you think Newcastle need to be wary of? Not just the Caicedo and Welbeck aspect. Is there anything else or any particular style of play that you guys play at Brighton that could disrupt us?
Yeah, I think just first of all to add, I think that if you were to, I know when you talk about, and some places do it when you put like a combined 11, like a best combined 11 between the two sides. I just looking at that team now, and I just thought if you put Caicedo and Bruno in the middle of the park as a duo together, I mean, that's 2 years from now, that's a Champions League middle. That's outrageous. Just looking at it would just be nuts. But in terms of players to look out for and style of play, this is something that Welbeck has allowed us to do and something we didn't do against you when you beat us last year and something we hadn't been doing until really the end of the season. Expect a lot of bodies in the box when we come forward. That's not something we've been doing for a long time, but you saw it this weekend against Manchester United just gone. There was 4 or 5 people in the box, both goals. And we are not afraid to crash the box now and cause a lot of problems and get a lot of people in there. And I think that's going to be a change that we've not been, that Newcastle have never dealt with recently against Brighton. Not many Premier League teams have dealt with against Brighton because we've generally not operated that way. And when it comes to what that means for players to look out for, the obvious one, and we've seen it, and we saw it at the end of last season too, is the resurgence of Pascal Gross. He is not quick. He is not strong. He is not a technical genius, but he is the most intelligent footballer on any pitch at this point, it feels like. He will meander into the box at his own pace. He'll be busting a gut himself, but he's still slow. And he will find himself open consistently. And we saw it this weekend against United.
Popped up twice here, didn't he? It was around this position. He kind of just popped up and ghosted. Anything on this right-hand side, whether it was March and Lallana, creating opportunities here, Welbeck as well. And he just popping up in this little bit of space in between the right back and the centre back. And that's where he got a couple of his goals from. So, yeah, I think that's a fair point.
Yeah, he's just so smart, and actually he scored from one from each side. That's how dangerous he is. You don't know where he's going to show up. That second goal, like you said, he kind of just drifted in on that side that he's at right now, and popped it in the back of the net from the goalkeeper's spill. But when he scored the first goal, he did the exact same thing, but on the other side of the field.
So is there a general switch then? Do they tend to just naturally fluidly switch positions,
Yeah.
Lallana and Gross?
Yeah, very much so. And Welbeck too, to an extent, right? He will be leading the line, but he's not afraid to just dip in and out of those flanks. And then, of course, you've also got Trossard, right? And Solly March. Solly March is the guy who cut in and took the shot that led to the second goal. And Trossard is the guy who played the ball into Welbeck for the first one. So there's a lot of players that are offensively capable in this group. And Welbeck is the man that's allowing them to reach the potential we're starting to see from all of them. But there's a lot of players to watch there, but there are some of the parts more than they are individual talents, right? This works because the team works as a unit. So it's up to Howe. If Howe wins that midfield battle, your Brunos, your Joelintons, and they win that midfield battle and they take over, all of the stuff that we've just talked about, nowhere near as effective. So
I'll come to the Newcastle's perspective on things now. So Chris, I'll start with you. Obviously, I asked the question to Chloe and Josh about what have we got to fear, or what do we as Newcastle fans need to fear from Brighton, and what they've got. They've talked about the switch play with Lallana and Gross. You've talked about Welbeck making those little runs in and behind and causing those problems. Caicedo in midfield, being sort of that dominant force. Trossard, who I think is playing in an unusual position at left wing back in that respect there. From your perspective, Chris, tell us where you think Newcastle are most dangerous in this sort of tactical setup here, and where can we sort of cause damage from your perspective to Brighton?
I think for me, Pete, it's the middle of the park. I mean, I watched the Man United game and I thought Caicedo was fantastic. But I think he's going to be in for a tougher afternoon on Saturday because having faced Fred and McTominay, he's now got to face Bruno and Joelinton. And I think that's a different proposition, if I'm honest. Bearing in mind, though, I've always liked Pascal Gross and also Solly March. I always think Solly March is quite underrated because for some reason, whenever I watch highlights of Solly March, I always think, "What the hell, he's decent him," because he always seems to have like a good solid game, but then he'll go. Correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, Chloe, but he always tends to have patches in and out the team. I don't always feel like he's always in the 11.
Injuries.
So, is it injuries? Yeah, because I was going to say, 'cause
Yeah.
whenever I see him play, I think he's pretty decent. Like he's a good, solid player. I mean, in terms of us threats, I mean, I always say St. Maximin, but I suppose really the main threat is probably Callum Wilson, because Callum Wilson, as we saw, very, very quiet game against Nottingham Forest last weekend, and then all of a sudden, bang! You know, that's what Callum Wilson can do. He's a natural finisher. And you know, even if he has a quiet game, if you give him an opportunity, you know, there's a good chance he'll get it on target. So I think Callum Wilson is obviously the main threat for me. Miggy Almiron, fantastic in pre-season. I think he was a little bit unlucky against Forest at the weekend because you know, some things didn't come off for him. But as always with Miggy, you get the work rate. His confidence is probably as high as it's been since he's been at the club.
It's this movement here, Chris, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is. It's this movement. So Trossard likes to get forward and get in support Gross and Welbeck in the box, which Chloe and Josh have talked about. But Almiron ultimately is the guy that likes to make that move forward. And time and time again, Trippier would find the ball here in a little bit of space and just clip the ball in and behind this into this sort of space here. Or it would be Willock or Bruno that would try and feed the ball in between the two of the centre backs in that little space, and that's where Miggy will be running into. So he's one of them that's going to really stretch the play time and time again for Newcastle. And obviously, we've not even talked about ASM, who you know, with the ball at his feet, wants to make sure. And this is where Solly March is going to need to be mindful, because if Brighton are getting forward, if ASM picks the ball up here, and he did a number of times against Forest and really tore the third centre back here to shreds. If he gets one-on-one here, and obviously on the screen it's Veltman, that's what he wants. He wants this player out the game here, and he wants to isolate to be one-on-one, where he can either shift left, he can shift the ball left, or he can shift the ball in and have a shot. And this is where he got a lot of joy from things in general. But anything else? You obviously talked about the midfield battle there with Joe Linton, Bruno, and Willock. Anything else that you think?
I just want to touch a little bit more on what you just said there, Pete, because you're absolutely right. When I was speaking about Miggy, someone in the chat put it, actually, it was a good comment. I think it was Michael Pomar, and apologies if it wasn't Michael, but he was saying about Miggy Almiron. We've seen Miggy Almiron like come in a little bit, so maybe just in front of where Webster is, and that allows Kieran Trippier to bomb on. And as you quite rightly said, against Forest, we played against a Forest sides who were lined up very similar to Brighton. And if Trippier can get past Trossard, or at least restrict Trossard from coming through, that's where the threat is, and that's where I see Joe Willock pushing forward a little bit as well. So all of a sudden, Webster has got Almiron in his face, and then he's got Joe Willock trying to maybe get through that gap there between Dunk and Webster. You'll find Almiron maybe pulling out wide to kind of distract Webster and bring him out, and that's where your gaps are. And then you don't want to leave Lewis Dunk isolated in the middle, because if you do, you're then going to have your other runners. So you're going to have Joe Linton from the left going towards Veltman, and then you're going to have Bruno, who we know likes to, he's box to box, likes to get forward, and all of a sudden it can be like an overload. And then don't forget the three centre backs in Veltman, Duncan, Webster are all going to be keeping an eye on Callum Wilson as well, who's obviously a major threat. So I do think, especially given what you were talking about with Trossard, he's probably not your natural left wing back. He's not a Cucurella. So Eddie Howe could well be looking at that and saying to Miggy Almiron, listen, I want you to kind of float in that attacking midfield area. I want you to try and stretch the defenders out. We want Kim Trippier to bomb on. Obviously, there's a threat then of the counter attack, but if you manage that in the correct way and have it in a balanced way, then that could be where we get our joy at the weekend down the wings.
I've put a little square here, because this came up time and time again against Forest.
Yeah.
In the Almiron was here almost kind of, is a high flying right-sided inside forward. Willett was trying to find space in between here, and at times he did. Bruno was picking up the ball in this space. Trippier was almost playing as a right winger. There was this kind of square that was going on. Joe Linton would always be here just in case anything broke, because what he would do is make that run here. So if it did break over Trippier, and Trossard, for example, gets the ball in that position, that's where Joe Linton would come across. And the one thing I'll say, and we've talked about it, Josh and Chloe won't be aware of it, but the work rate of these guys is unbelievable.
Yeah.
The ground they cover, how much pace they have in terms of pressing high, winning the ball back. We did it time and time again last season. We did it again on Saturday. I think that's going to be a key feature there. But equally, very, very well organised with the likes of Dunk, Webster, and Veltman. You've got a fantastic goalkeeper in there, in Sanchez. I'm surprised that Lamptey's not playing. I don't know if you guys are going to give us a reason why you think March is playing ahead of Lamptey. Obviously, we know Lamptey has been a terrific, talented player. But yeah, I'm just going to come off this screen now. But talk to us about Lamptey before we kind of move to predictions. Is there anything in particular as a reason why Lamptey's not in the team?
I can go if you want.
Go for it.
This is the difficult thing with Potter and the lineups. Listening to everything you've just said, I'm sure he's fully aware of the same thing, right? So maybe this is the game Lamptey starts, and Solly is shifted over to the left. That he's already incredibly adaptable and very good at left wing back, Solly March, and is much more defensively minded than Trossard. So maybe this is the week that Lamptey starts. It's really hard to know when Potter rotates so much. It doesn't hurt us. It's the way he works, right? But it's hard to guess. Lamptey, in terms of why he's not first name on the team sheet like he almost definitely was, 18 months ago, injuries. He had that brutal injury about a year and a half ago. had to have hamstring surgery. He came back, just about got fit. I think towards the end of last season, Chloe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was like February, March, he just about started being considered for the first team. And he's only just had his first preseason in about 2 years. And albeit he's obviously young and incredibly talented, when he did come on at the end of last season, he didn't seem to have that same explosiveness. And, you know, when he did come on against United, he looked outrageously good. Looked very good, very quick, very strong, and looked like the old Tarek Lamptey. So in terms of whether we'll see him tomorrow or whether he'll get on the starting lineup, I really don't know. He really could, though. It's not to say that he's kind of fell out of favour, but there's a lot of moving parts there, and it also doesn't help that Solly March has had an unbelievably good preseason. He's been flying at that point, and it's just, I don't know. It's hard to tell, but Lamptey is still very much part of the plans, and tomorrow could well be the day we see him start.
Don't say that to us, John. Come on, you're killing us now with that. But yeah, look, I'm mindful. I didn't mention Keith. You know, from the tactical setup, is there anything that Chris maybe didn't catch on with or didn't mention about the tactical setup that you maybe saw that Newcastle could cause a few problems?
What I'm intrigued with, we didn't really talk maybe so much on the defensive setup of Newcastle, and I think obviously the last few times, particularly at the Amex, Newcastle have considerably got stronger, obviously with the acquisitions of Byrne and Trippier. And therefore, I'm going to Brighton a bit more confident that we can at least get a point this time than much more than previous years. I think Newcastle look very solid, and it's saying something that they're not even, that lineup didn't include Botman as well. And I don't expect them to be in the lineup from the beginning tomorrow as well. I expect maybe again for him to come on as a sub appearance late on in the game, because that seems to be Eddie's style with new players, and particularly sort of bringing them into the team and not putting the pressure and the emphasis on them as much. But no, I'm just intrigued to see how Newcastle, I mean, Brighton are going to have their tails up with Gross, you know, and how Welbeck played at Old Trafford in particular and tore them to shreds. It's going to be interesting to see how Newcastle's back four are going to handle their, particularly Gross, Welbeck, and the other Brighton players as well.
No, it's interesting. Look, I think you've made a really good point. And look, I'll just bring it back up just for a second. In that, actually, the way in which it's set up, the defensive unit of Newcastle has been really, really strong. But if the game's going a certain way, don't be surprised if we bring this in over the course of the game and we match up what currently Brighton are putting in, and then we could in this sense bring Willock off and set up very, very similar to Brighton. Don't be surprised if that happens during the game. It is an option, because we've got the options now. Keith's talked about that. I think that's a really interesting point, is that we are set up to play in different styles in different ways, but we are very stronger as a defensive unit. And we all have that understanding. Target can play left back or left wing back. Trippier the same. We have that ability to change as the game goes on. But Chris, you wanted to make a point just before we come to predictions.
Yeah. So firstly, I just wanted to compliment Chloe on her away shirt. So I saw Tariq Lamptey in that shirt. And, you know, I'm a big fan of Nike merchandise anyway, but lovely shirt, really, really like it. But what I wanted to also add was, I don't know whether Josh or Chloe know this, but we were granted special dispensation from the Premier League to wear our, I think it's our warming up kit, isn't it, Pete? Because they were concerned about kit clashes. And my initial thought was, well, even the kit Pete's wearing there, the third kit, I don't really see what the big problem is with wearing that against Brighton. But anyway, but what I thought was interesting as well is I thought whenever there was kit clashes, there was an opportunity for the home side to wear one of their away shirts. And just when I seen Chloe in that orange, I was thinking, well, wouldn't that have been easier to just, Brighton to wear the away shirt and us to wear, I don't know, like the third kit, for example. But yeah, it was just to let you know that you will see Newcastle playing in a shirt tomorrow that probably you haven't seen before. And it's got like different images that represent Newcastle, hasn't it? It's got the bridge, it's got the Angel of the North, it's got everything on it. But yeah, so it'll be a one-off, apparently.
I remember there was a couple of years ago, just before we got promoted. Chloe, you might remember this. We went to Leicester, and the officials decided just before kickoff that our away kit clashed. We didn't have our home, and it would have clashed anyway, and our third kit clashed as well. So we actually played in Leicester's away kit for the game. They sorted us their away kit. And then we promptly went and beat them 4-1 or 4-0 in the year they got promoted. And then they immediately signed Ujoa from us right off the back of it. He scored a hat-trick there. But that was when Brighton came out in Leicester's away shirts. I did not know what the hell was going on. Because I was watching, I was like, what? What is going on? But yeah, it's that shirt looks nice though. I like that fourth training shirt, whatever it is. It looks cool.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's a lovely training shirt, to be fair. It was one that I was going to purchase in Turkey when I was on holiday recently, but I didn't manage to get it for whatever reason. I was focused on the away kit, and I managed to get it. So, lovely.
Pete, just one last thing, and I know you'll be interested in this. I think Chloe and Josh may be interested as well. Bit of breaking news. Fabrizio Romano, who we all know is very well respected on Twitter. He has said that Emmanuel Dennis has had his medical and is on his way to Forest, which I think is a good signing for Nottingham Forest.
Interesting. Would you have taken him, Josh, Chloe? Would you have taken him?
Definitely.
Are you surprised you've not got in for him?
No, I'm not that surprised. I'm not that surprised. But I would have took him if he was available. I'd rather have Sarr if they're offering.
Yeah, he's apparently. Trying to think what team he's been linked with. I think he might have been linked with Forest as well. I'm sure he's been linked with Forest.
Ismail Assar.
Yeah, Ismail Assar's been linked with Forest, but I think he's been linked with a couple of other Premier League teams as well over the last couple of days. He's looking like he's on the verge of moving too.
Leeds, I think.
That's the one. Sorry. Yeah, I was trying to think of the team. Yeah, been linked with Leeds heavily, but I think Forest have been interested in him too. But interesting one. I think there's a lot of Newcastle fans that would have maybe took Emmanuel Dennis as well. Maybe even Ismail Assar. So again, another player that Forest have invested in. I think that must be that's got to be version on 14 now.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that 29 now or something?
Madness. But look, we'll get to predictions. Look, at 5 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, what do we think the score is going to be? Chloe, I'll start with you. We'll go around to Josh, Keith, and Chris. Get your opinions on this. Chloe, what do you think the score is going to be at 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon?
I'm going 3-1. That's me going with my heart rather than my head. But yeah, 3-1.
3-1. Brighton.
I don't think we'll win that convincingly, Chloe.
I knew you'd come with something like that, Chris. I knew you would. Chloe's going 3-1 Brighton. Josh, what are you thinking?
I think if at 5 p.m. tomorrow, nothing could surprise me, honestly. This is such an even matchup. It's such a cop-out that anything could happen. So because of that, I'm going to go with 0-0.
Ooh, 0-0. Yeah, the battle of the defences then, keeping everything solid. Keith, your opinion on the predictions come 5 o'clock tomorrow?
Two sides that started the season well and two sides that ended the season well as well. I think this could be a fun game. Lots of players playing with confidence, early doors, nothing to fear. This could be a 1-1, 2-2 tomorrow.
Okay.
And that's what I would take. I'd take a point if somebody offered it now.
Okay, gone for the old draw, Chris. You're putting your thumbs up there in agreement. Are you're the same? You go for 1-1?
1-1, mate. 1-1 for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tight game, if I'm honest. I think it's going to be, I'm going to go 1-0 Newcastle. I think it's going to be a very, very tight game. I think we're going to get a goal And I think, like I say, it'll be a close one. It's not going to be easy for us, not at all. But I think it's going to be an entertaining game, regardless of the fact that there might not be a lot of goals in it. And because they are two very, very good footballing sides, there'll be a lot of chances created for both teams. So, be an interesting one. But look, we'll end it there. Thank you very much, Chloe and Josh, for joining us. You guys deserve the hat-trick ball or something very, very similar. I'm sure we'll sort that out very, very soon. Just a little bit of maintenance on the way out. If you haven't checked out the Fully Loaded Transfer Show from last night, having Jordan Cronin and Lee David joining us, make sure you tune in for that and watch that on Watch Back. A fantastic show, giving us all the updates on transfers and opinions of what we think is going to happen moving forward. We have a reaction. Join the boys on Saturday night to have an instant reaction from the result. Hopefully 3 points for Newcastle. And also we have a La Liga specialist, Semra Hunter, who's going to join us from La Liga TV to talk all things Spanish football related. And we've been linked with a few Spanish football players in recent days and weeks moving forward. Just on the way out, of course, our sponsors, Shyburn, Simon's in the chat. As always, massive supporter of the channel. And make sure you check out his gear and everything involved with Shyburns. He's gone for a 3-2, absolute classic Newcastle United win. And he's put that in the chat there. Pins and Prints. Make sure you get involved with Pins and Prints. They have some of your favorite pins and various different prints from all the classics, whether it's kits, players in general. Make sure you get involved in that as well. We also have Retro NUFC. Make sure you get that supported. And I will get a picture on there as a promotion going forward. I will switch one over at some point. And we also have Machine House, who I also don't have that picture to promote. But Machine House is gear is very close to ready to go. So if you haven't checked out their gear, it's outstanding. Some of the quality of their gear. And again, they are massive supporters of the channel as well. If you're not a member, join a member, $1.99 a month to be part of the Loaded family. And we are moving closer and closer to that 5K subscribers. So if you haven't clicked subscribe yet, please do. If you haven't clicked the thumbs up to like, please do as well. Lots have already clicked that thumbs up already to be part of the channel, and it helps us grow and develop as we go along. But guys, thank you very much for joining us. A pleasure as always. Love talking about everything and all things away days. Always a pleasure. You guys all take care. Fingers crossed, 3 points for Newcastle. But until then, we do love playing away. You guys take care. Speak to you very, very soon.